Krista, take it away.
You're on mute.
Okay, can you see my screen?
Not yet.
How do I do that?
Just the share screen down at the bottom middle, and then choose which view you want to share.
Okay. Okay. You should see it now.
Yes, we can see your desktop.
Okay. My name is Krista Groll, and I have a business called Aurora Awards, which is a film awards company for businesses and for artists in addition. There's a little QR code that tells you about that. I don't really want to focus on my business per se, but I'll integrate it in how I've used it throughout my presentation. So one thing that we need to realize is when they want to do an internship, the biggest thing about this is what's in it for me. That's their attitude towards this internship. What's in it for me? So if you have that focus in mind, you can create something that is really meaningful for them. So as you develop a plan and make it meaningful, and then you use the recruiting sites that are out there, and then you build also in the same time relationships with your schools, then you will actually make this really effective. And that's how I've gone about doing my interns. So what is your business why? Okay. I was in a point where I didn't have the opportunity to hire on people, and this was the next step. So it's inexpensive. When I talk about there's no concept of normal ranges, that really means they don't know what their limits are sometimes, and sometimes they'll think outside the box where we won't, and they'll ask what ifs and whys.
Do you mind making your presentation, your PowerPoint screen a little bit bigger on your desktop?
That work?
That is better, yes.
Okay.
Thanks.
So that's kind of the reason why you're going to do this. You know, instead of hiring somebody, the easiest way to get a good employee is going through the route of going through colleges and hiring there and training them as you go. And entrepreneurs probably know this better. So you're going to discover why paid versus unpaid. Okay, so this is the biggest thing. Unpaid interns cannot do any work that contributes to a company's operations. And that is something that could hurt you if you get them involved in a company operation and then they can't perform to something. So they've made this kind of a rule. And there are several rules that you can that you need to apply to having an intern. So here are the rules. Similar training to school for the benefit of the intern under close supervision. So you'll gain no immediate advantage, but you'll actually see a benefit later on. And then they're not necessarily going to be hired, and they're not necessarily entitled to any wages if you have designated that. Okay, so you can go to the recruiting sites. I mean, all of these down here on the very bottom have ways to recruit interns. And then I like to use Handshake because that's what the universities use. All the local universities. Students are familiar with that. So they are able to get on there, create their own connection with you as an employer. So there's steps that you need to take when you're on Handshake. And I'm going to give you a little bit of a background on how I created this. So I created an account, And then they automatically ask you to fill out their survey. And this kind of focuses them on where you'll be according to, and also kind of gives information to the school. So then you complete your profile. And I'm going to show you what a profile looks like. So can you see this? This is a profile, my profile for my company. And it has just a small little bit of information. And it talks about different trust scores, different things like that. So you can create your own profile and your company profile separately. So that's the best thing to do. Then you go on to request the schools to approve you. So this process might take a little bit longer. So you click on the schools. There's up in the left-hand corner of Handshake. And you actually reach out to the school and make an invitation for them to be part, accept you as an employer. And what they do is they review your information online, they review the company, and they make a decision based on what you present to them. Once you're connected with the school, they'll send you an acceptance. And when they accept you, you're able to, at any point in time after that, post something for, post like an opening for an internship. And what posts look like are so I did, let's say, marketing. This is one I've done before. So they give you a form to fill out online. And this is exactly what it will come up once all the form is filled out. And it lists your descriptions, your hours. It is really good to be upfront with the student and give them as much interesting things to learn about here, and know that this might be a fun internship to be part of. And does anybody have any questions?
When you Krista, when you create a Handshake account like this, is it tied to multiple universities? I mean, if you wanted to get students from Utah State.
Yes, let me go to schools and show you. These are the ones I've connected with because I want to work with these schools. So I do have these school names, and you can modify it by size, ranking, certain types of, you've got your colleges, certain types of specialties. I'm connected to several different schools personally. And you can go on to find more schools. So all across the country, schools are getting on here and they're using Handshake in order to connect. So you can also search the students too. And I can search the students and I can narrow it down by using keywords and filters and majors. And you can see how many students are in here that connect from those schools for me. So I can go on to each, like a student here, and each of the students will have their own profile. They'll tell you about their work experience and their organizations and the courses they've taken. And this will get to, I actually went on a couple times and I invited a couple students because they didn't see my posting. I went to them because I was interested in them, and I could ask them to take a look at this posting, and that's another good way to find them. So,
Krista,
hey, Chris, I have a question.
Go ahead.
So we have interns from both the high school and Utah State University Eastern And they're doing like 3D design and SolidWorks and 3D printing stuff for what we're doing.
Uh-huh.
The high school interns require paperwork to be filled out every quarter, as far as grades and how they're doing and what they need to improve on. Would all this be taken care of through Handshake as far as the high school, or is Handshake even for high school or just university?
High schools do participate in this as well.
Okay.
I'm not aware of which local ones are, but I have reached out to several high schools and they do have internship programs in their schools.
Are they familiar with Handshake, or do they use other programs for this type of stuff?
I've had a couple local schools know about Handshake already.
Okay.
So after you create your job posting and you search for your students, then you really should set up an interview, and it should be a personal interview. And I say that because I've kind of experienced both a remote interview and not. And they really want to know that there's a real person on the other end who they'll be working with, or who, you actually talk a little bit of personal too and ask them, what does it look like for you to have an internship, and kind of get this, mutual agreement on what a good match would be. So. Sorry.
Krista, what type of jobs or roles have you found to be most effective for engaging students?
I'm marketing. I did some research work also. Because I can't use it in daily operations, I've had to look outwards. I'm developing a like a sponsorship platform, but using it as making it a filmmaker resource. So that development has been part of what I've recruited filmmakers for, or excuse me, interns for. And so the contract that I worked with through Weber State had, for example, they had midterm and a final report that we had to create. And you have to match their credit hours. I had an intern that had 180 credit hours that they had to use up, and they had deadlines to meet for the school. And then you need to create an interactive log. And I'm going to show you what an interactive log that I've created for my interns look like. Okay, so I just created it on Sheets, and I have the different, I have goals, hours logged, assignments, learning, and a post-intern survey on my Sheets form. I'm just going to show you an example of this because this is how the student I interacted on a regular basis. So I did have the student fill out an NDA prior to contracting with them, or they agreed. And then I also created points where there's checkpoints along the way that they could connect with me and tell me how their experience has been so far. So once you have this contract with them, you need to list your experience, have them list what they know, because it's important to match what they know to what you can give them to do. And especially important to connect with them about communication, because that's the biggest part of this whole internship, especially if it's remote, like mine have been, and they are able to express different things on texting versus they actually connected multiple ways. So it was really good to help them do that. So make the expectations clear. And if you do that right up the front, then you will have a better time throughout the internship because you can always refer back to those those expectations. I keep it on my goals on the interactive log. And it's important to feed them because they're eager to learn, and they want to grow, and they want to connect with new people. And so this is your opportunity to teach them, how it works in your business and how you're able to create what you do for the business, and gives them energy to keep working on the business as well. So, and then you have to also reward them or acknowledge that they are making a contribution, or let them know that their learning is important and what they've done, versus, like I say, at the first of the internship, kind of give them some perspective. And then after that, you need to finalize with the school, because nothing is really done until the school has communicated with them. You produced your reports to them. The students turned in reports to them. I have actually had a good experience with that. I've had the school administrator give me a call and talk to me about how it's been and what they needed to learn and what they needed to grow and get more interns to them. I'm going to go over to my log and show you what I have here. So I have my goals defined with the student, and then I'll revise them as things go. Here I have an hourly log in which I have logged what they did, and I keep an ongoing total up here at the top and what their goals are. As they went, they actually added, kept a log of the hours, and they recorded their own time. I don't know if you can see that. If they had questions, they were able to put it out off to the side to the right. Like, this is the question, and I can answer right on the Google Sheet. So I would give them assignments, and I would give them open assignments, as well as just like I wanted things done by a certain date or time or something like that. So
it seems like a really good way to organize kind of how you're going back and forth with the students, kind of some asynchronous communication there. Krista, this is really cool. I think we've got a couple of questions in the chat that have come through that maybe we can jump into some Q&A and discussion within the group. But some of the, one of the questions I saw was about the information on paying interns. Looks like Hallie and Chad both had similar questions. Do the two of you want to share some context on what your question is in terms of the pay for interns? You can unmute yourselves.
Chad, do you want to start?
Sure, thanks. Yeah, I was just curious because I haven't used Handshake before. That seems super cool. And but you made a point about, hey, this unpaid internship has these certain rules, and I wondered, if you're willing to pay for interns, if that are paid internships also people connected to them through Handshake, and if there's just any other insights that you have about that would be helpful.
You can do paid or unpaid. You have to make that decision up front when you list the posting. Recognize that the unpaid ones have even more kind of rules, but mostly those rules that we listed on this screen, the 6 rules. Where is it? Right here. One thing that I did both. I did one intern that was not paid, and I did another intern that was paid. Everybody kept telling me that you get a better intern if you pay them. And so I thought, okay, I'll pay them on the second round. And my first intern was actually a lot better than the paid intern. And I've learned that they're paying for the credits for the school. I mean, this one was 180, it was 3 credits for him, and he needed to have this in order to graduate. Some schools require them to have 3 interns before they graduate, like my son did. What other questions?
Thanks. So enlarging on my questions, as a mother of a junior at a university back east, she's no longer based in Utah. And so a lot of the connections are different. So it's not necessarily easy to find an internship. She's interested in going into education policy from sociology and policy directions. So if anyone's looking or knows how to get her into a good program, the reason I'm bringing it up is because she needs pay. She is in a financial self-reliance component in addition to any scholarships and everything else. And so for family reasons, she's not able to look at them unless she is paid at a reasonable rate as a research assistant or otherwise. So when you call it an internship, you box it. So that's my larger question. How can businesses make it possible to employ research assistants, or consider that someone who doesn't need the school credits might be an excellent candidate if you put it in a different format from calling it an internship only?
Well,
we use that terminology as well. I mean, some of the students need to have that internship credit or that title, but we also just refer to our student teams as kind of part-time employees that will work anywhere from 10 to 20 hours. So I think on Handshake, you can designate it otherwise, I mean, other than an internship. And that's where a lot of the students that we recruited when I was at the university, that's where they would come through, and we would just use Handshake almost exclusively. But yes, I think you can have you can call it whatever you want. Is that kind of what you were referring to, Hallie?
Yes, thanks. Because, that's why I was so interested, Krista, in how you're presenting this. So thank you for an excellent presentation. And being able to understand that the nuance of the town-gown relationships in terms of faculty and community business members also reflects in terms of how students can be connected into business setups. So if you change the language, you can change the flavor of how that relationship works and get the better candidates who also have needs that make them even more hard driving and willing to put that effort in beyond the summertime into the year, and hopefully into being part of your prospective job team in the future.
Yeah, I think you're right there. Spencer Lovelace, are you here still? He had mentioned that he uses interns. He may have had to drop off. Yep. But he was using high school as well as college interns. I wondered if anyone else has had experience on the call working with either high school or college interns or students, and what have you found effective in your work there?
One thing I would say is, so we've been doing interns at Data Automation basically since the beginning, because we started in Athens, Georgia, which is literally in the backyard of UGA. And so we had University of Georgia students working for us as development interns, as well as marketing interns. I mean, we'd go to the career fair. And that was actually a fantastic way we found to find interns, because how the student presents themselves at that event that was where we found some of our best interns. One thing I would say is, if you are bringing them into a paid role, we had both unpaid and paid roles. Make sure that you set a minimum level of experience that you're looking for. I had one intern who He came in and he had zero development experience, and I was not accustomed to that. And so I learned pretty quickly that he was actually costing us a lot more. Like we weren't seeing any real benefit from having him there. And so I ended up having to let him go. And I told him, go take some development courses and come back and we'd happy to have you again. But I wasn't going to teach him how to write a line of code, be a basic developer. I needed him to have some basic skills. And so we developed a developer test that we gave to the interns as an upfront way of checking their skill level. And it was pretty basic, and most of the students were able to pass it, but it was a quick way to find the individuals who would just end up wasting a lot of business resources learning that they weren't skilled enough to do what we needed to do.
One thing
Yeah.
you can do on Handshake is you can select what year of school they are in. So you can get the upper division students, even the alumni from schools that are listed on there.
And I think this guy was upper level, and I was like, oh, that wasn't, it surprised me. It really, he's the reason we created the test.
Yeah, I think in our experience when we were doing this, one of the things that we found is we definitely had to have a training that, I mean, we kind of just went into it knowing that for 10 or 20 hours of the first work that they were going to do, they were going to be in training. But one of the ways that we made that efficient was having a senior and a junior kind of intern or analyst, as we would call them. And the senior analyst would have been at our place for at least 6 months and would then just kind of train the junior analysts on what they were doing. So it took a lot less of kind of the other employees' time to bring those students up to speed. So that kind of senior junior track was very helpful, and we would also try and get them in for like either a full year or as long as we could, so that training was leveraged as much as possible. So that was one method that we used to be more effective with our students. And I think, Krista, to your point, the definition and the specificity that you have to give to these students is critical. I mean, it's a lot of specificity, but it also forces you to unpack your process and unpack your thinking in more detail, which I think is valuable for you no matter what.
Yeah.
Any
There's
other
a question on being paid. I just set it up so they got paid like at the end of the month. Some of them one of them wanted every 2 weeks, and I was able to set that up for them. They're pretty flexible on how they get paid. So they'll even do Venmo.
I've seen, so I even had interns where I'd go and we'd negotiate working on all sorts of different stuff. I'd had somewhere we did like a stipend, and it was just a simple $1,000 a month, and they would put in variable amounts of time. I found that they actually do better with hourly though. Like I had one where I was paying him $1,000 a month, and he started working on stuff where he got $15 an hour instead of my stuff because he could like equate that easier. And I was like, well, I'm going to throw this out. And I just started doing hourly, and that was a lot better. So I don't know, you're totally accurate. They're very flexible.
I actually had my intern check in twice a week, just for at a certain time of day, twice a week. And that was really helpful for them to have that structure.
I really appreciate that we're taking it in the direction of money. It was not to try to subvert the focus though. And I appreciate, Krista, that you're taking this forward with Will and the others. It's just recognizing the college students of today are different even from when we were in college, right? And the needs and the job prospects, and trying to set yourself up, thinking of it in a different format. We have now students as well as graduates who are in an entirely virtual space. How do they have the face-to-face meetings? How do they have those watershed moments at the water cooler when no longer having a water bottle is even possible to fill at the water cooler?
Phone calls are really good, actually.
Yeah,
And
we spent a
personal
lot
phone
of time
calls.
we've spent a lot of time on Zoom with the students that we've engaged right now. I mean, Spencer and I at Summit hired 3 or 4 students when we launched, and we didn't meet those students in person for the first year they worked for us. Like, we never met them in person. And finally we got to the point where we're like, hey, we live 30 miles away, let's go to lunch. And we had to force the physical meeting, but it was very interesting. I think there's a lot of opportunity on the virtual side. But Krista, I think your steps here are really helpful just to understand how best to unpack that, because it is working with students a little bit of a winding road in universities. So this has really been helpful. I think we're coming up on the time for our meeting right now, but if you have additional questions, Krista, can people reach out to you? What's the best way to contact you or chat with you?
Yes, either LinkedIn or I'll give you my LinkedIn, or you can just email me. That's fine.
Okay.
I'll type it in.
If you throw that in the chat, that would be great. But thanks so much for presenting this and sharing your experience here. I'll have this recording up on the website shortly, but really appreciate your time, Krista. Thanks so much. And thanks everyone for the conversation. Krista just put her email in there. So yeah, feel free to reach out.